All right, welcome everybody. Unfortunately, we do not have a quorum, so we cannot continue with our regularly scheduled monthly meeting. However, we do have Ms. Green here from the OEMC that was prepared to give us a presentation. With the absence of quorum, we will not have a regular monthly meeting. We'll have to reschedule that. Information will be forthcoming, and as Ms. Heyman had pointed out, I'll politely ask my colleague, Council Orlikoff, to distribute that updated information via the mailing list.
Great.
With that being said, since we don't have quorum, we're currently at 10 minutes after 1. I'm going to ask Ms. Green to go ahead and give us her presentation if she's so inclined to do such. And I'd like everyone to welcome Ms. Green to our
All right, thank you guys for coming, and I appreciate you inviting me here. My name is Lauren Green. I work for the Office of Emergency Management and Communications, the OEMC. So it is a large umbrella. It incorporates 911, 311, traffic management, sometimes parts of streets and sanitation. So we do a lot within the city. What my role is, by title, I am a PCO2, which is a police dispatcher. So if you are one who listens to the scanners, you will hear my voice or my colleague's voice. We are the ones that tell the police what to do. So that's why I said that earlier, we tell them what to do. I've been with the OEMC for 8 years, started as a call taker, worked my way as a dispatcher. Now I'm in training, so I train all our incoming call takers, dispatchers, traffic control aides, sometimes our fire call takers. Whoever comes through the training department, they touch one of myself or my colleagues. So as far as my presentation, I have 3 big overarching topics that I'm going to cover. And if you guys have any questions, I'll try my best to answer them.
Just a quick one.
Yes.
You do regular communications as well as emergency, right?
So 911 is only the emergency
Okay.
side. So we work exclusively, or myself, I work exclusively
Okay.
for 911.
Okay.
311 has their own
Yeah.
call takers that they only do that. So
Sorry.
I'm gonna explain a little bit more between,
Yeah.
you know, the difference between the two, because a lot of times people
Yeah.
aren't sure which one to call. Yeah. So what you've been handed is a packet that we like to give out at community events. It's an overview of the 911 system. So it has good information in there as far as when you would call, which one, and the types of questions that we ask. I try and mitigate people's frustrations by letting them know what is expected of them when they do call 911, because we do have expectations. So, as far as an overview of how the 911 system works, there are about 420 of us, call takers and dispatchers. The city of Chicago is split into call takers and dispatchers, if you guys weren't aware. A lot of other agencies, their call taker and dispatcher is the same person. So anytime you call 911, you're going to first reach a police call taker. They're gonna get that initial information from you. If you need the fire department for some reason, you need an ambulance, they'll conference you in with a fire call taker who'll take additional information. If you just exclusively need the police, they'll get whatever it is that you need the police for, and they'll send a ticket over to myself or any of the other dispatchers. Okay? We have 3 priorities as far as how we categorize calls, and this comes directly from CPD. So we have priority 1, priority 2, and priority 3. Priority 1 we call our in progress job. So that's something where there's an imminent threat to life or property. So if you hear your shots fired, the person stabbed, burglary in progress, anything like that would be a priority 1. Priority 2, a little bit lower, still important. There's a chance that a fast police response would make the difference. So maybe it's not happening right now. Maybe they're not breaking into a car or a home right now, but it just happened a few minutes ago and the police can get there quickly. The offender might still be in the area. That would be a priority 2. So we call those like your alarm calls would be some examples of that. Then our last one's priority 3. Those are your nuisance calls, not because they're a nuisance to us, but because they're a nuisance to citizens. So loud music, parking complaints, dogs are barking, all of those would be priority 3 calls. So
I'm sorry, on this page, this is 1, 2, and 3?
no, on that page is when you, a list of when you will call 911 and when you will call 311. Okay? So whatever it is that you tell the call taker, your words are gonna determine what they make that call, and that's gonna determine the priority. So people oftentimes will ask me, well, what do I say? Say exactly what it is that you see. What is going on right now? And you're gonna have that page where we asked about those 5 W's, the most important one being where. We can't do anything until we know where the police need to go. So focus on that. We will take an exact address, we'll take half addresses, we will take cross streets, we'll take entire blocks. If you're gonna give something like an entire block, just make sure you're being as descriptive as possible. So descriptions, when we're talking about people, head to toe, outside in. I tell people, focus on distinct things, focus on shoes. I have an outfit underneath this outfit. I'm going to take this uniform off once I leave this place, right? So if the police are chasing me and you describe me as a person with a dark polo and dark pants, well, that's not what I have on underneath this, and they won't be looking for that. But these shoes, my nice fans, they are staying on my feet. Also, listen to people's accents. That could be a good description you could give the police. Do they have any piercings? Do they walk a certain type of way? Do they have any limp? Anything like that would be good descriptions to give the police. And it's the same with vehicles. So if all you have is a general description of a vehicle, it's fine. If you're like, it's a red 4-door, great. But is it a red 4-door that has a loud muffler? Or is it a red 4-door that has LED lights? Things like that would be helpful to give your call taker if you are describing it. Then we have your 911 versus 311. So that's that, I believe, I want to say either the first or second page in your booklet. I have a quiz for you guys. If your neighbors are playing loud music, are you calling 911 or 311?
311.
Who says 311? Raise your hand. 911, raise your hand. You are calling 911 because the police have to go out for that. 311 is not non-emergency. That's a separate thing. 311 is city services. It's non-emergency city services. So open fire hydrants, garbage cans, tree trimmings, animals, that, you know, they're not vicious, but just animals roaming around, you will call 311 for that. Anything else where you need the police to go out, even if it is as simple as make this neighbor turn this music down, the police need to make the neighbor turn the music down. So call the police if it's something that city services is not gonna handle. Yes, sir.
Is there a non-emergency line that we should call instead of 911 in this circumstance?
So there is, and it's weird. A non-emergency line does exist, and you can reach it by either calling 911 or calling 311. The only thing that they do at the non-emergency line, so it's staffed by police officers, so they do police reports. So if it's something that the police don't need to go out for immediately, so say you were home, say you were on vacation for this weekend, the holiday weekend. You come home and you notice your garage was broken into, you will call the non-emergency line or call 911. We'll transfer you to the non-emergency line. They'll do a report for you over the phone. So it's the exact same type of report you would get if you were in person, but it's just designed to kind of keep the officers on the streets when we can. If for some reason, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I have a tag-along question. Can't those reports, the reports similar to that you get home, your garage has been broken into, can't those just directly be filed online?
Yes.
Okay,
So
what's that address again?
I will have to get that for you. It's through the Chicago Police.
Okay,
Probably just start on chicagopolice.org.
Okay.
I believe they have a link to it. So yeah, either online or call. If you call 911 and you're talking to the call taker and they're like, hey, this is not a 911 issue, you actually need 311, no problem. We'll just transfer you. We're all connected. So don't feel like, oh my God, I called wrong. We are there. We get paid nicely. We'll answer whatever questions that you have and get you to whatever resources that you need. Now, speaking of resources, I'm going to pivot to that. We have a couple of brochures in that packet. It talks about 988, our suicide hotline, or the suicide hotline that's national. So if somebody is in a crisis, they can call 988 and speak to someone over the phone. As long as it hasn't escalated to they've actually attempted to harm themselves, then that would be a 911 call, but 988 is a resource there. 211 is also a newer resource. I believe it came out about last year. So it's more for social services, and it is the Metroland Chicago. I'm sorry, the Chicago metro area. I'm so sorry. So if you're in the suburbs and someone needs food assistance or shelter, employment assistance, 211 is the line for that. You can either call 211 directly, text them, or go online. OEMC has its own app, so I was asked to kind of touch on that. And within the OEMC app exists a feature called Safe Walk Chicago. So if you are somebody who likes to take walks, or even if you're just out and about, what that feature within the app will allow you to do is set up an emergency contact. And you will let that emergency contact know, hey, I'm going for a walk. It will send your location to your emergency contact. Once you reach your final destination, it's another little press within the app to let them know that you reached your destination safely. Yes, sir.
Okay.
That right there. If for some reason you get into a problem, there's a panic button within that app that you can press. It will send your emergency contact your last location and prompt them to call 911 if you are unable to do so yourself. So if you are somebody who's out and about, you feel uncomfortable by yourself, you can always utilize that within the app. 311, because they are highly understaffed, it's very difficult to get them on the phone. It's hard for us to get them on the phone, but okay. They have their own app as well, so it's a little bit easier to put in your city services request through the 311 app. You will get your number directly, so your service number, I want to call it, you'll get that directly, and you'll be able to track the status of your service call through 311's app. Okay. And the last few pages in your book are about Smart 911. Does anybody in here have a Smart 911 safety profile? Oh my goodness. Oh, everyone needs to go make one. So the city of Chicago has had this for about, since 2018, I want to say. The whole purpose of it, I described it as making 911 a little bit easier to call or deal with. A lot of people get frustrated because there's a lot of questions that we have to ask. And if you're calling 911, you're not necessarily in the best mood or in the best headspace where you can answer those million questions that we do have to ask. So you would create a safety profile. It's an app you can download. You can go directly to the site. Myself and my colleagues, we also sign people up at events. If that's something anybody's interested in hosting, we'll come out and do that. Create that safety profile. The minimum we ask for is an address. If you are calling from a cell phone, we do not get your exact address. So it's not like TV. We will only get an exact address if you have a landline and you are calling from that landline. We do get maybe within about 100 feet, which is great, but if you're in a high rise, where in the high rise are you? What floor, what apartment, where will we send the police? So it's very important to make that safety profile and at least have that address. Other things that can go in there, you can have emergency contacts, you can put your medical information if there's particular medications that you are on. Helps the fire department already know if it's already in the profile. If you're somebody that uses mobility aids, and the fire department needs specialized equipment to get you to where they need to go, then they need to know that so that they're sending that good equipment out the first time. Vehicle information. I'm hoping that carjackings have slowed down. I haven't checked the stats in a while, but a lot of people, if you're carjacked, you've had a gun or something else traumatic in your face, you're not gonna remember your plate. And if you don't know your plate, I need your VIN. Who knows their VIN by heart? Nobody. So, put your vehicle description and your plate into your safety profile. So if you're calling like, oh, I was carjacked, and your call taker is like, is it the red car? And you're like, yes. Guess what? The police already have that plate number then. So it's all about making your life easier when you're calling us. It's one profile for the entire country, so you don't have to go from place to place making new Smart 911 profiles. Not every agency subscribes to it, but you are able to check. So if you're a person who lives in Michigan, or I'm sorry, you live here and you travel to Michigan a lot, the entire state of Michigan has Smart 911. All their agencies do. So if you're in Michigan traveling and you call 911, they're still gonna see the same profile. Now, some things may change, but a lot of things aren't. Your medical conditions aren't gonna change. The medications you take aren't gonna change. Your emergency contact may not change. So all of that information they'll have beforehand. It's not anything that you pay for, so you just sign up, and every 6 months they'll contact you and say, hey, is this still accurate? And you say yes or you say no, and you update it accordingly. It's encrypted off-site, so it's not anything that we have the ability to search. And it's really only available for the call takers. It's linked to whatever phone number that you choose to sign up with, whether that's a landline, a business line, or a cell phone. When you call 911, that is the only time that your profile comes up. And once the call taker is done with the phone call, it closes. So I myself as a dispatcher do not have access to it, and the police do not have access to it. Last feature of Smart 911 that is not linked to having a safety profile, so you can do it whether you have one or not, is we have a texting feature. So if you are in a situation where you are unable to speak, what I do particularly when I am training is make sure that my call takers and my dispatchers are actively listening to what's going on in the background. Because sometimes that will give away that the person is not in a position where they can talk, and that will prompt them to send a text message. And then you can text back and forth until the police are on scene. So that's good for everybody to know because we have so many people calling your cell phones. So that is my spiel. That is the information that is contained within your booklet. If you guys have any questions, I can try and answer. Yes,
I've got one more, I have to ask you on the side because it's kind of specific, not related to this.
yes, sir.
I'm curious about the degree of success that we're having creating smart 911 profiles. How many 911 profiles have been created in Chicago?
It's crazy because
You
I
can
don't
round it.
pull, I'm trying to see, I don't pull the numbers for how many profiles that we get. I can only speak to like, let's say, the last event I went to was at a senior housing facility. I think we had about 10 people that attended and 4 of them signed up for profiles. So every time we go out, if we are able to sign up people, we do. I'm just not exactly sure how many total we have for the city. Yes, sir.
You mentioned 988 earlier about suicide prevention. There's also been talk about if someone's having a mental illness episode or mental health challenge episode, we should call that number as well. Is that true or is that not true? Or is there a separate number where it's not necessarily an emergency situation, but at the same time we need to call someone to get this individual some help because they could be a danger to themselves or to someone else.
So my question would be, by episode, what are they doing?
Potentially becoming physically violent, loud, boisterous, talking, maybe falling constantly or anything like, or wandering in and out of traffic, things like that.
Okay, that will be a call to 911.
Okay.
And then specifically request a CIT trained officer, so a crisis intervention team. Those officers do a little bit extra training
Okay.
in order to deal with people who have mental illness.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
311 is a very helpful program. Why is it underfunded?
Why the city allocates the funding that they do. I know their staffing is a little bit low, but I also know that they just started hiring back for additional 311 call takers.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
You put out reports on how many calls you all get in per month or per year or periodically?
I don't believe we put out reports, but I can tell you in 2023, we took 3.4 million calls.
Okay.
On July the 4th, because I just ran on those numbers, it was 11,400 something calls.
Calls that go to 911, how do you know where to send them? To which,
Which district, which
Yeah.
area? Okay, so our CAD, so our computer aided dispatch system, once you input an address into that system, it automatically determines what district it belongs to. And then the city is separated into 13 zones, 12 zones, 1 through 13.
It's just all.
So each zone is responsible for dealing with 1 to 2 districts.
They just draw up databases.
I figured there had to be some way to do that.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure how.
It's,
So you all don't track the individual calls coming in, but then they go to the police and do they prioritize the calls or do you guys? I mean, you mentioned there were 3 priorities.
Right, so CPD has actually set what the priorities mean, right? So then once you call and we get the information, say if you're calling and saying you see somebody outside and you believe they have a gun in their waistband, call tech is gonna ask you some more questions, And they're gonna make it a person with a gun. Per CPD's policy, a person with a gun is a priority 1 call. So that's how it works. Once we determine what the nature of the call is, that is what determines the event type and thus the priority. Yes, sorry.
If I understand you correctly then, so 911 puts it into the system, it routes to the correct district, and then with the priority 1, 2, or 3, and then it's on that respective police district to dispatch or not dispatch. Because sometimes I've been in these meetings and it feels like both are, hot potato. The police are saying, well, it's the holdup is with OEMC. OEMC is saying the holdup is with the police. You hear about what I'm assuming are many priority ones, police showing up 90 plus minutes later, if at all. So do you want to share your personal stance?
Sure. So we have a certain time within which we must dispatch calls per our own OEMC policy. The only exception is if you absolutely have no one to send it to because they're on something else. So for example, when you have maybe 3 or 4 people shot at one time in one location, that might take an entire district down depending on how many officers are working that night, because you need someone to do the paperwork. You need someone, if the person has survived, to go to the hospital and talk with that victim. If they did not survive, you have someone who's gonna be waiting on scene until the E-techs and body removal services come. They're gonna have other people who might be collecting shell casings or other evidence. So that can take several officers, and that might take an entire district down, and there might not be anyone else to respond to calls. So we have a certain amount of time in which to get it out. The districts themselves are not dispatching jobs, so that's what myself and my other colleagues do. We receive the call or the ticket from the call taker and say, this is the 14th district, correct? So that would be zone 3. They handle the 12th and the 14th districts. So those 2 dispatchers are dispatching for both of those districts. They're bouncing back and forth between which one has which job, and they're doing all of that at the same time as dealing with my on-views, traffic stops, anything else that's coming up. So the response time for when CPD actually gets there, that has nothing to do with us. It's only, we have that time in which to give them the job and say, hey, you need to go there. But it depends on so many things. Who they have, if there's details that they're on, what the weather is, all of that can impact how long it takes CPD to actually respond. Yes.
So you're a dispatcher?
Yes.
So somebody calls 911, they get an operator, they get the information, then they transfer that to you,
Then they input a ticket and the ticket comes to, yes, a dispatcher.
and then you dispatch patrol, and you track how long it takes the patrol car to get to the location?
We don't track how long it takes them to get to the location.
What's that?
We do not track how long it takes them to get to the location. But I can see how long they've been on a job. So once I give it to them, there is a counter that shows how long they've been on that job, period.
Okay.
So how, I don't know their travel time, but how long they've been handling that call.
Is that stored though, right?
Yeah. It's stored in our CAD.
Yeah.
So anytime there's any status changes, it's stored. So, it'll track when the job was first sent out, and then any status changes the police might make, so they might say they're on scene, they might say they're en route, whatever, and then it tracks when that ticket was actually closed.
I had one experience last July, at 7:30 on a weeknight, was still let out. I was walking my apartment, somebody was 20 feet in front of me. When they got to the alley, 2 guys jumped out, grabbed him, put a gun to his head. And so I had like 15 seconds to look at these 2 guys, and I turned and I walked quickly in the opposite direction and got to the end of the block and got out of their vision. And eventually wound my way back to my apartment, somewhat shaken by this. And I thought, should I not call 911? It's like 20 or 30 minutes ago. So I finally did. They said they were glad I called. They asked a lot of deeper information. They said, can you leave your name and phone number? I said, sure. 10 o'clock that night, I get a call from the police. They were down in the alley. Said, can you come down and talk to us? So I went down there. There were 4 plainclothes officers. The robbery I saw was on the south end of a spree robbery that it was centered around Diversey and Kedzie. And they asked me a lot of really detailed questions about what I saw. And I was very relieved by talking to those 4 officers. They were very professional. They showed empathy. So I was really impressed with that. And a couple of months ago, about 1:30 at night, I heard, on Saturday night, I heard strange noise outside. I looked down and somebody was stealing a catalytic converter. I called 911 just to report it. I didn't expect an officer to come and, stop it. But patrol officers came 5 minutes later. I went down and talked to them. They were very professional as well to get the information. So that was my experience with 911, so.
Well, that was a good experience. I know a lot of people get a little bit frustrated for us, and for that I say, if you do have like a rude call taker or somebody you just don't feel they're doing their best, please call back and ask for a supervisor, because we can improve if no one knows that these things are happening. But call 911. If you saw something that's weird that didn't sit right with you, because a lot of us don't trust our instincts, like we know something doesn't feel right or doesn't look right, but we're still afraid to call. Just call anyway. And if you don't want to leave your information, you do not have to. You just tell your call taker you would like to be anonymous. As long as you aren't a victim or you don't want to speak to a police supervisor, you do not have to leave your name.
So, from what I understand, there's a big effort to get this smart 911 app on many phones as possible, and non-phone profiles. Being the fact, and this is kind of where I advertise the next event, being the fact that National Night Out, so nationwide police community outreach effort, is coming up first Tuesday of August. Are OEMC sending teams out to those events?
It would be a member from the training department. We are so invited. Last year I went to the 11th District's National Night Out. The year before that I went to the 18th District's National Night Out. As long as you let us know. We go everywhere within the city.
I'm not gonna put you on the spot right now, but we'll continue that conversation.
Let me get to me before 11 does. Yes.
I'm trying to figure out and follow. We've got 3.4 million calls that come in. There's a record of the call. There's a record of it, how it's being dispatched. Then when we go to our CAPS meetings and hear about our beat and what happened that month or those 2 months in our beat, does every call that we see that comes in, do we see that report of that call on our CAPS spreadsheet? Or do some of the calls fall by the wayside because a report wasn't made? Or do we only see report crimes or incidents that have had formal reports made, and that's the importance of making a report?
No, so if you're attending a CAPS event, if you're attending something in 14, you're only going to see things related to the 14th district. If you go to a beat meeting, you're only going to see stats related to whatever beat whose meeting you are attending. You're not going to see the citywide stats. I believe on the City of Chicago's website, you are able to pull the stats for the city, but if you're going to those specific events, they're going to be tailored towards whatever district beat, etc.
But do we only get what has official reports made that the victim has to file a report, and if they don't report their catalytic converter stolen, then it's not part of the crime numbers?
So you mean like if they've called but they didn't make a formal report?
Yes.
No, you're going to get the information on your calls for service. So whether that resulted in a report being made or not, it doesn't matter. You're just going to get information on how many calls for service the police actually responded to.
Okay, so then if we have a catalytic converter theft and the owner of the car didn't file a report, that won't show up as a theft. It'll just be in the calls for service. So it's really up to the individual, the victim, to take it further and file a report.
So reports it's a little bit, I think you're kind of conflating the two when they're separate. So if somebody saw a catalytic converter being stolen and they called 911 and they're like, hey, someone is stealing a catalytic converter, that is a call for theft. That is made. That's a call for service. Police respond to that call for service. Doesn't matter if they catch the person, doesn't matter if they make a report or not, that call of theft is still law. So it would be something that you see
As a call for service,
as a call for
but
service.
not necessarily a theft of auto.
Right,
Or from
let me clarify that just a little bit, because I can see where
Yeah.
it kind of branches out, and I'll even take your time on the screen. OEMC is not CPD.
Right.
It's very important that we make certain that we delineate the two. OEMC has their records, and what you're talking about, because I've gone to the CAPS meetings, the beat meetings, and I've seen their comp stats, that's what they're sharing with us, which are basically like bona fide, tried and true, those are actual incidents. Doesn't, may vary greatly from reports for thefts that OEMC receives. So I think that's where we're getting a little bit of a disconnect there.
Any of the weeds.
Yeah, we're only tracking the calls. We're not tracking how many reports that
Yeah.
resulted in.
Right, yeah, it's,
And then the CAPS is what tracks the actual reports that were made?
the comp stats are basically, and those are citywide.
Okay.
And I don't know if you, I think I saw you at the special meeting. The commander kind of went into this just a little bit, where she said she goes to the citywide comp stats meeting, to where they sit there and it's the headquarters and everybody's kind of like, okay, this is your reports and, for the month. And even though you can actually get them every week, if you went to the 14th district website to get up-to-date information. If you wanted to get OEMC data, you can actually track that online. They have data channels that you can get into at the OEMC website. Is that accurate, Ms. Green? I don't mean to put you on the spot.
Yes.
So you can actually sit there and track citywide. You can go by zone, like she was talking about. You can go by area, you can go by district, or you can go by block. So you can kind of narrow it down, widen or broaden the scope of, or even make it more narrow as you see fit, that fits the needs of what we're looking for. So, but it varies greatly from what CompStat reports on, because CompStats, like I said, they come out every week, and if you missed last week, good luck trying to get your hands on it for the following week. It eliminates the previous week on updates. So that's one of the challenges as a non-police officer or anything like that, to where the information we have is only available for a limited time. You have to go out there and get that report on a regular basis in order to keep track of things properly. I don't know if that's done by design, but I think that you can also go on the CPD's website and get the data sets like that as well. They won't be as finite as the CompStats reports.
Does the OEMC have any other responsibilities other than the 911 and the 311 process, like towing, moving vehicle violations or non-moving vehicle violations? Any other responsibilities that would fall into the remit?
Yeah, so OEMC is a combination of 911, 311, and traffic control. Streets and sanitation is within our building, so they are the ones that do the towing. They're their own department though, but like police officers are the ones that would write up a tow. They would contact us over the air, over the radio. We do the ticket for them, send it over to Streets and Sand. It's up to them when they have trucks available to actually do the towing to dispatch them.
So those are non-moving violations, correct? So no, like moving vehicle, like, you go through a stoplight.
Oh no, that would be 911, you'll call us.
Okay, and then that would be the police who would have the, okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Ashley, David, and Chris are part of the district council side of the CCPSA. And then the 7 members commissioners are part of the citywide. And one of the things that they're looking at is officer wellness and their training to help them be better officers. They want to make sure they provide the necessary resources they need so they can be better prepared to be our officers and have fewer incidents of misconduct. As I'm hearing these amazing numbers of phone calls that you all receive, what are some of the things that you all have for your wellness as dispatchers, as intakers? Because I can imagine some of the calls that you all are getting for 6-hour shifts over a period of time, 8-hour shifts, 8-hour shifts, especially over holiday weekends, things like that. What are the wellness things that you all have? And if you can speak frankly, do you all have enough wellness resources? And if not, so I can take that back to the commissioners and let them know, we're focusing on the officers, but our intake people need wellness as well.
So we have a couple of clinicians that come in that employees are able to talk to. I would say my personal opinion is it's not enough clinicians. And it doesn't cover all of the shifts. We have 3 shifts.
Right.
Oftentimes people, and I'm particularly sensitive to this because I work the midnight shift, 9:30 PM to 6 AM. No one wants to come in those hours to come talk to us because that's their time to go to sleep.
Right.
So a lot of times I feel like that shift falls through the wayside when it comes to wellness. We have a quiet room where if you have taken a particularly difficult call, you are able to go and just sit there and kind of get yourself together. And then there's a decompression room that they're building. So it's supposed to, I guess, be a larger version of our quiet room. You can just take a moment. I don't think that there's enough resources for us. I think a lot of times people forget that we hear it before the police hear it.
Right.
If they haven't already. I wish that there was more. There's ideas that I have, but I tell people, my shirt is this color. My shirt is not white. Those are our supervisors. If I had the opportunity to be a supervisor, there's some things I would like to implement that I think would be helpful as far as loans. But I have to work within my scope at this time.
Understood.
Piggybacking on his question, is there an ability to seek extra help without putting your job at risk? I mean, if you say, I need to talk to somebody, is there an avenue to do that without A, putting your job at risk, and B, putting a big, I need help thing on my forehead while telling everybody else?
I will say one thing I forgot to mention, we do have a peer support team.
Okay,
So if somebody is comfortable talking to another call taker or dispatcher or a supervisor, because there's members of our supervisors, about what they've experienced, because oftentimes you don't understand unless you're actually doing it. That is available. And we have great insurance. So I tell my new hires, make sure that you are, if you need a therapy.
yeah. That's gonna tie into what I wanna talk to you about at the side, actually.
Take your medication.
Good.
I try and do meditation and types of things that, those calming techniques with people. And I'm hoping that people will take my lead and expand.
Kinda ties into what I wanna talk about you on the side, but it's not exactly mental health.
All right. Well, Ms. Green, I thank you very much for enlightening us.
I got a question for you too.
Okay, give me 1 second, let me